What's good, YouTube? Today's topic, I'm going to be talking about the 90s and what it was like growing up in the 90s. So, I was born in 94, so I was pretty young during the 90s, but a lot of the 90s technology and the 90s, I don't know how to word it, I guess you could say social things like TV shows, video games, consoles, the introduction of the internet, stuff like that. A lot of that was still kind of bled into early 2000s. Like for example, I grew up using Windows XP, I think is what it was called, and that came out in like 2001. So I still would kind of consider that the 90s. So let's see. I'm trying to think. I think the first console I got was the NES, and I think that was actually like late 80s, if I remember correctly. And then I had like the Nintendo 64 well into like 2006, maybe to almost 2008. So a lot of the technology from the 90s bled into the 2000s, at least for my family, because we didn't have much money. So I got a lot of the 90s stuff well into the 2000s. So I went to this website kind of to refresh my memory, just to see like what was like popular during the 90s. And I remember I'm looking at this right now up on the screen, and I remember AOL, Instant Messenger. That I remember using that a lot. I think I used it honestly for music though. Like I don't obviously I had friends growing up, but I don't know if I really messaged people on AOL Messenger. I remember using AOL a lot for music, and I can't remember if they had music videos yet or if it was just people sharing music. But I do remember AOL Music, Napster. I don't know if I really used Napster that much. I remember hearing about it. I remember it being very popular at school. Uh, I know Seinfeld was very popular. I remember Friends, Frasier, Cheers, but Cheers was more like I think 80s into 90s. Trying to think of some other TV shows. I'm going through this. Do 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 do. Yeah, the show about nothing. Okay, and then Microsoft Office. Yeah, I remember the introduction of Microsoft Office, but I can't remember if that was 90s or if that was early 2000s. Um, okay, it says it's 90s. Okay, so yeah, I remember having that. I remember using Microsoft XP on our family computer well into 2010s. I was using it in high school still, which was like 2010 to 2014 for me. So I remember using Microsoft XP back then. But yeah, you have let's see, NSYNC or NSYNC. I think however you want to NSYNC. I don't know. I think people say NSYNC, but I always forget how to you pronounce it. All the Backstreet Boys. Yep, I remember the Backstreet Boys. All the Game Boy, dude. The Game Boy Advanced and the Game Boy Advanced. What was the one that flipped? Was that also a Game Boy Advance? I always get the two mixed up because I had the Game Boy Advance. It was more like a square, not the Game Boy or Game Boy Color, but like the more of a rectangular kind of thing. Um, and then one of my buddies had a Game Boy Advance flip or whatever, and it is like folded, almost like a flip phone. And I remember um, his had a backlight, so I remember him trying to sell his, and I wanted it so bad because I could not use my Game Boy Advance at night, and I remember trying to play my Game Boy Advance underneath my bed sheets. So I remember having a flashlight on it, and I think I was playing like Tony Hawk Pro Skater or whatever the the version was for Game Boy Advance. But I remember um, his had a backlight color or just light for the screen, and I wanted that thing so bad because I couldn't really use mine late at night, and I also couldn't use mine in the sun either. And I just remember he was gonna, I don't know if he was gonna trade or if he just was gonna sell it to me. But so I remember being at like this public clubhouse in our neighborhood or something, where they would throw like parties or events or something like that where you could like rent it out. I think it was like a community clubhouse or something for the neighborhood. And I remember him plugging it in, and the thing caught on fire. Just like it just the battery just exploded or whatever. So I remember I remember that. But I wanted that thing so much, man. I remember getting the Game Boy Advance. I don't know if I got it from like a pawn shop or what it was, but I don't think I bought it new. I remember this. I remember talking to my coworker about it, and I can't remember what it was called. I think it was called like Virtual Boy. Virtual Boy. Yes. When did this come out? I remember this came out in '95, bro. This thing was awesome. The Virtual Boy was probably like the beginning of a VR headset. I had a to do not a tripod, a bipod. Yes. Um, and it was black and red on the outside, and I think when you looked inside, it was black and red too. I don't think it was black and white. I don't. I'll try to find a picture of it and I'll put it up on the screen if I remember. But this thing was awesome. I don't know when I got it exactly. I don't know if I got it in the 90s or the early 2000s, but this thing was sick. So, okay, you would lay on your belly and you would look into this like VR headset looking thing, and then you would have a controller attached to it. And I remember playing Mario. It was some kind of like not volleyball, tennis. It was like some kind of tennis game. That thing was awesome. I don't know what other games it really had for it, but I remember playing that. That was really cool, and I don't know if we paid for it like brand new or if we found it at a garage sale. I know my aunt found the NES at a garage sale. Let me see how when did the NES actually come out? I want to say that was late '80s. Let's see. That's not telling me exactly when it was released. July 15th, and then it gets cut off, of course, Wikipedia. Let's see. Okay, so it was like 86. Yeah, I remember using that. I remember using the NES probably till like 98 or maybe even 2000 ish. But I remember playing a duck hunting game on there. I think it was the Mario and the Duck Hunter combo thing. I think that was for the NES. I'm debating. I'm getting either that or the what do you call it? The Nintendo 64 mixed up. But bro, just so many consoles that came out in the 90s. There were so many other competitors because you had the Sega Genesis, you had the Super Nintendo, you had so many other brands out there other than just the Nintendo, Xbox, and PlayStation. So my recollection of the 90s was just absolutely incredible. We didn't really have the internet. I think the internet came out maybe in 95. Let's see. Let's see. But yeah, I remember not having the internet. And I remember when it first came out, there was something called dial up internet. And I remember playing a Spider Man game on our family PC, and also this like baseball game, I think by 2K. I think 2K made it. It could be wrong though. And at the time, I think my dad was in real estate. So he would have to make phone calls and stuff. And I had to get off the computer when he made a phone call, which I thought was weird because it was like I'm not playing online, and it wasn't like consoles today where you have to be connected to the internet. When like back then, I don't even think you had internet connection options really for consoles until maybe like the 360, maybe the first Xbox, but at least the 360 you had that. So I remember that was absolutely hysterical. Looking back at it, I also know where we lived, we had like no signal when cell phones were coming out. But that might be like an early 2000s thing. But dude, I remember biking, late 90s, early 2000s, my brother and I, we would go outside, go skateboarding and biking all day. And I just remember our parents would be like, all right, be back by dark. They didn't really say what time, but they're just like, okay, be back by dark. And I remember always being out in the neighborhood, and like whenever the street lights turned on, you knew like, okay, I need to get going. And I don't know if it was just, I don't know how to explain it, but like our house was like built in the 50s, so it was a really old house, and you could hear whenever one of our parents would open up like their bedroom window or the living room window or whatever, you could hear that thing like miles away. It had a very distinct dunk noise that you could hear so far away, and you're like, oh shit, I gotta go. You know, you knew you were in trouble. Um, I also remember having so many friends over and playing Super Smash Brothers, but I think that was more of a GameCube, like early 2000s kind of thing. I'm trying to think, did they have Smash Brothers on? I think they had it on Nintendo 64. So you might have even done it with Nintendo 64. But dude, I remember AOL Messenger, um, Napster. I don't know if I used that much, but I remember hearing about it. I know it was very popular. I probably remember more for the early 2000s, so I might make another video on that. But I just kind of wanted to talk about what it was like growing up in the early 2000s and like using that 90s technology. So like the Nintendo 64, the NES, being out all day biking, like not really having access to the internet. I don't even know if we had a phone, like a family phone, quite yet. I remember we got one when my dad started doing real estate, but I don't know if we really even had a landline yet, or if we even used one. I don't fully remember. But it just, bro, it was so much fun. Looking back, I kind of wish we could go back to times like that. Like, don't get me wrong, I love having the internet in the sense of like YouTube, online gaming, but I'm not a fan of like Netflix, Hulu, Disney. I hate how they charge you a monthly subscription, and they give you so many ads on top of it. I It's also like cable. Like, why am I spending $200 on cable to get all these commercials and all these like spam commercials talking about lawyers, or like, did you get hurt on the job? Call 1-800-SUE or something. It just was like, I hate that stuff. So I was like, I really wish we could go back in time and relive like late 90s, early 2000s. And I mean, I'd be okay with having internet access in the sense that like, okay, we can stay connected, like we can play games with each other online, um and we don't necessarily have to be in the same neighborhood. Like we can stay connected is my point. But I just really hate all the spam. I'm not a fan of all this online streaming, Netflix and stuff. So I'm a more of a physical media. I'm becoming more of a physical media person, and I might make a video about that because I'm seeing that kind of trending on YouTube, about physical media and how it's coming back in like 2024, 2025. So I may make a video on that. But I definitely just wish we could go back to that time, where we just didn't. And also maybe it's nostalgia of me just being a kid. But like the time where you go outside, you just do something all day, and then you just go back inside when the sun goes down. You just had no, you didn't give two shits. You're out all day just doing whatever you wanted to do. It probably is more of a kid thing growing up, but I just miss that mindset and not really having to be hooked to your phone all day. So I mean, and I'm addicted to my phone. I definitely admit that. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to talk about the 90s, early 2000s, and what it was like growing up in that time period, because I know like nostalgia is definitely a thing these days, and I know a lot of people are kind of looking at the 90s with rose colored glasses and stuff. Anyway, appreciate everybody for stopping by. If you enjoyed today's video, leave a comment down below. Always liking and subscribing helps the channel grow as well. But anyway, appreciate your time, and until next time, have a good one.